7 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Before we get started, I'd like to just let you know it's the last deep dive we're having in March. And if you know of someone who has an interesting topic, or even yourself, if you would like to be part of our deep dive program, just contact me and we will get you on the schedule or talk about what might be the best venue for you. But now I'd like to introduce Patricia Crain. She is one of our fellow Master Naturalists in our chapter. She does her volunteer work at Hagerman National Wildlife Refuge, and she has a passion for educating children, so much so that it has brought her to this point with her interest and her experience, and she wanted to share it with you guys. And so, Patricia, I will turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for joining us. Yeah, I have a lot of children in my life. I was a high school math teacher for 15 years. And for the past 13 years, I've been running field trips or helping with field trips at Hagerman. And what I have seen is very disturbing. I also have 9 grandchildren and lots of nieces and nephews, and I'm very concerned. I think it's a crisis, and nobody's really talking about it. So I wanted to go and talk about what I saw unfold in my lifetime with my own children and my own family and my students and field trips, and give you some examples of some really outrageous things that I have seen. So, and my screen won't advance. Of course it did earlier. Okay. So I want to start in 1870, because in 1870 in our country, it was just after the Civil War, and life was not easy. If you wanted a house, you had to build your own, you had to hunt or gather food. Of course, you didn't have electricity or running water. And the children were working. They were constantly gathering firewood or carrying water, feeding the chickens. They were just constantly working. And they were outside almost all the time. There wasn't really anything inside the house to really tempt them. They were out there and they were learning all about nature in the process. And if you think about it, from the beginning of human beings up until we got more technology with electricity, children were raised that way from the beginning of time. And in the past 100 years, things have changed a lot. In 100 years later, we had so many inventions. We had cars and grocery stores and electricity. All of those things made life easier and gave everyone more free time. But as things got easier and as technology advanced, children were spending more and more time indoors. I was a kid in 1970. And my rule was, you don't come in this house. We got fussed at just to go to the bathroom or get a drink. We were outside. We were on our own. We had our own. Nobody supervised us. We ran wild in the streets, basically. I was in a city, and this was basically could have been me. It's not me, but that's what I was doing in 1970. We were told to be home when the streetlights came on. And that was our lives. And we made up games and governed ourselves. Also in 1970 was the year that things really started to move indoors a little bit. This is a Pong game. That was one. It wasn't the first video game, but it was the first really popular one. Television also started bringing children inside. But when we were inside watching television, we were watching Mr. Rogers or the Electric Company or Sesame Street, really tame things. And just to give you an example, my 4-year-old granddaughter's favorite thing to watch on TV is Jurassic Park. And it's PG-13. Like, I wouldn't even let my 4-year-old anyway. So the kids are not only indoors, they're doing things that they probably should not be doing. I wanted to give you an example by following my own daughter. She is 35 years old right now. She was born in 1990. And so in raising her, I watched the children be moved indoors permanently. Now, a 35-year-old, those are the parents of the kids that are in elementary school right now. So I want to kind of take you through what I watched unfold with my own daughter. When my daughter was 6 years old, children were still a lot outside. It wasn't unusual to see a lot of children outside. You would have to slow your car for kickball games. Children would be taking over the streets and playing. When was the last time you drove by a kickball game in the street? It's been years for me, but when Kimberly was 6 years old, that's when poor little Amber Hagerman was kidnapped. I mean, it was such a tragic event. And it was such a big deal. And that's the same year that the Amber Alert got started. Also in 1996 was John Benet Ramsey. And so you might remember that one too. She was a little girl, 6 years old, found murdered in a room. And again, the media just exploded. The Columbine shooting when Kimmy was 9. So that happened, and 13 children were killed. This is, by the way, the memorial for that. Kimmy was 8 when that happened. So at the same time was when the internet started being big. In 1999, CNN News started before that, but that was the year with all these events that it became extremely popular. People started we had the news was more accessible. People watched it more. You could get to it online. You could watch it on TV. People were much more into the news. Also, that was the year that missing children started appearing on milk cartons, and it freaked all the parents out. So my children were young, and I was still encouraging them to go outside, and it was a really bad thing. Other parents would fuss at me about how dangerous I was being with my kids. Stranger danger became something that you had to teach your kids. That was new also. So in 1999, my kids, Kimmy was 9 and Richard, my other boy, was 11. And I didn't think anything about it. The 7-Eleven was right down the street from us. And I gave them some money and said, go to the 7-Eleven and buy yourself some candy. Because that's what I did when I was that age. I didn't think anything about it. Strangers walked them home and fussed at me. Total strangers were yelling at me because it was too dangerous to send my children out to the 7-Eleven right down the street. That's how it had become just in those 9 years, with all the things happening. People were afraid, and the kids never came back out. Also in 1999, the same year as my 7-Eleven story, the Game Boy was released. And it was really, really big for Christmas that year. Atari and Nintendo were also getting bigger and bigger and more popular. And so not only were the children moving indoors because parents were afraid, but they were also handing the kids these gaming systems instead of going outside. We'll jump ahead a little bit, 7 years from 1999, 2006. The iPhone and Facebook launched. My daughter at the time was 16 years old, a sophomore in high school. And that's a really big point that I wanted to make, because Kimmy was 16 when she got her iPhone. And now she's 35. And a lot of the 35-year-olds are your parents of the kids in elementary school right now. So the children in elementary school right now are their parents were the ones who started with the iPhones. And I'll get to more of that in a little bit. By 2008, I was a teacher in Sanger High School, and the classroom started becoming a lot different. I mean, crazy changes. By 2008, almost everyone in the room had a cell phone. And the kids were actually issued computers by the school as well. And so working in groups took on a whole new meaning. I remember in 2008, I was giving a school a group project. We did a lot of group projects, and I put a lot of time into assigning the group, because I like to get kids talking that didn't really talk much. And so I spent a lot of time the night before figuring out that Alice is going to work with Judy over here and setting the whole class up the way I wanted it. And I had done this, of course, for years. We'd always done this, and it always worked the same way. But that year, I assigned the project, and explained it and said who was working with who. Alex, you're working with Judy, and set it all up and said, okay, get started on your projects. And the room was silent. And I'm looking around thinking, what's going on? Because nobody was getting up and nobody was going to talk to each other. Nothing was happening. And so I went over to Alice and I said, Alice, you're supposed to be working with Judy and she's all the way in the back corner. What's going on? You're supposed to get started. And Alice looked at me and said, well, ma'am, of course I'm working with Judy. See right here. And she pointed to her screen and they were typing to each other. And to them, that was like perfectly normal. And I said, well, maybe you should go like move your desk beside Judy and then you could discuss the problem out loud. And that was like a foreign concept to these kids. And it just really blew my mind. And from that point on in my high school teaching career, that's how it was. There was no more, talking. Everything was text. The classroom was silent. Every now and then in math class, you'd have something weird going on during the day. And so you knew you weren't going to get anything done. There was a different schedule or something was happening, and you just really couldn't teach any math. And so I had a huge bucket of chess and checkers and cards and all kinds of games. And I would break out that bucket, and you'd hear laughter throughout the classroom. We'd all be playing. I'd be teaching someone chess, and the other kids, we all grouped up together playing cards. And by 2008, if we had a free day and I brought down the game bucket, I would say, okay, come on, we're going to play some games. And no one would move. And it's completely silent. And they're texting to each other. And then all of a sudden, like a whole group of kids throughout the classroom would start laughing all at once. And then a different group would laugh. And you'd always have like one kid who was out of the loop that had a book or something. But it was just completely, I knew at that point that the world was really changing in a way that I wasn't really happy about. So today's elementary students are raised by the first generation of cell phone kids. So they're raised to parents who had cell phones as teenagers. And I think that that's a really important point because if you're a teenager and you're handed a phone and you're texting all the time instead of talking out loud, then you're certainly not outside playing kickball in the street. And so these parents who were raised that way are not getting their children out. It's completely foreign concept to them to say, hey, go outside and play by yourself. Like and I don't think we're ever going to get back to that. But the fact that those parents didn't play outside much either, as time goes on, that's going to become a worse and worse problem. Today's 35-year-old parent has a lot of distractions. And yes, these are off the internet pictures. I don't know who these people are, but when we have field trips, it's a huge problem. Like these are the parents who actually come to the field trip with the child as a chaperone. And their face is in their phone and they don't even look up. And it's the saddest thing. And I've seen it so many times. A little girl runs up to their mom. I found in the butterfly garden, because that's one of our activities is we explore the butterfly garden. And the mom doesn't even look up. She's looking at her phone. Just a minute, honey. And she's just, looking like this. Doesn't even look at the girl. And so that's when I jump in and grab the girl by the hand. Come, show me what you found, because kids need that. I mean, all kids need that. And it's sad how many times I've witnessed that same scenario. So, in the 50-year transformation from 1970, when indoor distractions really started, until 2020, huge transformation. All the kids not only came indoors and stopped going out into nature, but also we need to look at what they're doing instead, because it's really not good. I mean, I have a picture up here of Grand Theft Auto. I have, like I said, 9 grandchildren and lots of nieces and nephews. All of them have unlimited access to the internet. And I have harped on and on to my kids about this. You really got to prevent them from seeing things that children shouldn't see, is what I tell them. But here's the thing. My daughter has a master's degree in cyberspace security. My son is an electrical engineer. Both of them have told me that there is nothing that I could do to stop them from accessing whatever they wanted. And I believe them because I made the mistake, a very bad mistake. I had a student in my class who said, "Ma'am, I could get to whatever I wanted to on this computer issued by the school." And I said, "No, Johnny, you can't access anything. They have you locked down on this school laptop. You can only get to certain things." And so I challenged him. And let me tell you, that was a bad mistake. Don't ever do that. If a kid tells you they can get to, just believe them. Just believe them. Move on. So I wanted to move on. One more thing. This is a little bit off topic, but I still wanted to throw this in there. These are children from what, 1870, who are doing chores. And if you study these pictures, you're very quickly going to see the difference between these children and children today. First of all, children today, I don't know that you could get them to do the chores that they're doing, but even if you did and you got the child to do the chore, there's definitely something missing, and I hope you can see that and come up with that. But it's earbuds. If these children were doing anything, they would have earbuds in their ears. And I think that's very unfortunate because they're not listening to the sounds of what's around them at all, especially outside. In 1870, if you wanted to have a book, you'd have to hitch up a team of horses and drive to the library. It'd probably take you 5 hours or so. And think about that. If these children were in this wagon going to the library, what would they be doing? Well, they would not be blasting headphones in their ears. They would be thinking. They would be formulating opinions about things. They would be analyzing things that they're seeing. They would have curiosity about what's around them. And a lot of that is gone. The music blasting in their heads is preventing them from really doing any kind of real thinking. So the timeline of music in 1870, if you wanted to listen to music, you had to make your own. In 1930s, then we had radios and records, and the time progressed, and on and on. And now music is everywhere. And the kids, it makes me so sad when I'm on a hike and I do see a young person, because that young person going for a walk or going for a drive inevitably has earbuds in their ears, just constant. And it's very sad because the sound of nature is known to reduce blood pressure. So before digital technologies, children had plenty of time to think and wonder and formulate opinions. About one half of teenagers today have 4 or more hours of daily screen time. That's from the CDC. That is a lot of screen time. That is time when they are not doing anything really much productive, mostly. I'll get to what some of them are doing here in a little bit. Another problem with technology of today is GPS. And with GPS, help is a phone call away. It's really taking away a child's ability to get into a jam anytime they have any kind of problem at all. And I'm mostly speaking about my grandchildren here. If they have the slightest problem, I mean, my own daughter called me because she couldn't find where the jarred garlic was in the grocery store. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got to be able to solve the smallest of problems. And of course, all the parents have GPS on their children. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. But the children also have GPS on the parents. Oh my gosh. I was sitting with my grandson and his phone started dinging, like randomly. And I'm like, he wasn't looking at his phone. He knew what the ding was. And finally I had to ask him, what's the ding? The ding was his phone dings every time his parent leaves or comes to the house. And I thought, I just can't understand why he would want that, but why I don't know, it kind of blew my mind. But when I was a kid, one of the biggest problems I had to solve was getting lost, because honestly, I have a horrible sense of direction and I would get lost a lot and I would have to figure it out. I mean, if I had to stop somewhere and buy a map or had to ask somebody or something, and a lot of conversations would start just from talking to people and trying to solve problems. But now their parents are always a phone call away. Everyone knows where everyone is at all times, and there's no more just trying to figure it out on your own. So every minute that a kid is spending on their screen, either it's gaming or texting or, oh gosh, you don't even want to know what they're doing on their phone. But every minute that they're doing that is a minute that they're not outside learning things by just interacting with nature and natural things like gravity. So bouncing a ball, you learn the natural parabolic arc. If you're playing in the dirt, you're going to learn about volume. And I have a story about that. One of our field trips, we were actually filling molds. And one of this little boy, he had to be 10 or 11 years old. And he watched the liquid go into the mold. And he was surprised that the level of liquid was increasing as we poured. And I was just shocked. And I just looked at him like, oh, wow, you've never played in sand. You've never played in the bathtub. You've never poured one thing into another thing. I don't know. That's the kind of thing you lose when you're not playing, having free play. Free play is what's most important to learn this type of thing. Like you're spinning a top, you're learning about centrifugal force. Riding a bike, you're going to learn about horizontal velocity, whether you want to or not. Pretty much a prerequisite. If you're lost, like I said, or broken down, you're going to learn how to solve your own problem. If you're out there on your own, collecting things, you learn organization and categorizing. And what they're doing instead is pretty scary. Um, all the TV shows that were off limits to me, all the, worst things that are rated, they're all on prime time now. They used to show that stuff after the kids went to bed back in the day, if there was anything racy, it was off limits to kids. And now they have access to all kinds. The video games that they're watching now or playing now, they're so realistic. But even worse than that, one of my grandkids, he's 18 years old. And I was talking to him. He was telling me about his best friend, Eric. Okay, your best friend is Eric. Well, when do I get to meet Eric? Maybe we could pick up Eric and go to a museum or something. And no, his best friend is someone he has never met in person. Never met in person. He met him on a game, and that's what they do is they play these online games together. And he's calling this person his very best friend. Another story about that particular grandkid, I won't say his name, but thank God they're not watching this, but he's 18 years old and he hasn't had a job yet, and it was finally time for him to have a job. And so they bought him a suit and he started going out to these job interviews, and he wasn't getting any offers at all. So after about the 10th job interview, my son decided to get to the bottom of this. So my son is, he has a lot of friends in office buildings. So they made this fake job that they created for him with a friend of my son, his friend. So the kid shows up to this fake interview with this guy in a suit. And he starts questioning him just like a regular interview, and all of his answers were pretty good. And so he wasn't really figuring out why this kid couldn't get a job until Daniel told him that he had to be home at 4 o'clock every day so that he could play his video game. And he just thought that was completely reasonable and rational. But obviously that's why he wasn't getting a job. This is a random picture. I do not know who these girls are, to be honest. I got this from my niece a few hours ago. She's here for spring break, and I've been watching her. I've been watching her. She spends all day long, as many hours as she can possibly spend, just going through pictures exactly like this. So these are kids that are in her school. She is not friends with them. She doesn't like these girls, but these girls take hundreds and hundreds of photos of themselves, selfies and group pictures like this. This is what they're doing all day long. They are posing for pictures. And I threw this in this presentation. It may not be related, but to me, there's a lot of bad mental energy here. It's unhealthy for my niece to be scrolling all day pictures of girls that she doesn't know that are posing like this. I don't think it's good for these girls to be posing like this either. To me, that's a level of arrogance that is pretty high. Everyone wants to see me. Everyone wants that. I don't know. It can't be a mentally healthy situation at all. And the number of hours that they're spending doing this is ridiculous. And even if I wanted to do this when I was their age, it wasn't even possible. You had to go to Walmart and develop your film for 2 weeks and go pick it. It was ridiculous. So that's I just really think that's another another instance of something that's pretty tragic. This is obviously the game of Monopoly. These children are not playing board games at all. At our field trips, we have one activity that is a board game. It's a life-size board game, so it takes up the entire pavilion. We have stations. There's like 20 stations. So you roll the dice and you have to go from one station to another. The children have never seen dice before. They roll the dice. They don't know what to do then. We have to teach them that they roll the dice, and that's how many space. It's a completely foreign concept to them. Now, this game is geared for fourth graders. So you would think that a fourth grader would be able to roll the dice and move that many spaces, but they've never done it before. So I just think that's really a bad sign. I don't know. I grew up playing games like that. Many children, you won't believe this, honestly, but you have to trust me because it's true. These children have never been alone outdoors. And when they come to my house, it's like, you're looking behind me. This is my yard. It's like, get out there. I throw them out. And it's a foreign concept to them. They've never done it. They've never like lifted a rock to see what was under it. And this is another one that I couldn't believe. In fact, when I first started hearing this comment, that I've never walked on a dirt trail before, I didn't believe them. I just thought they were lying to me. But no, I've heard it enough times now. I mean, every year we hear it more and more. In fact, last year I started hearing it from the parents. So one of our activities at field trips is to go on Harris Creek Trail. It's about a half mile and it's dirt. And the parents have never walked on a dirt trail before. I had to believe them. I mean, the chaperones. I mean, if you think about it, if they live in the city, all the city parks are perfectly manicured, meaning, if you have mowed grass or chemically treated grass or, and a cement trail, there's not a lot of wildlife on there. And all of the city parks are concrete trails now. They've never stood outside without the sound of traffic. So on our hike during the field trips, we always make them pause and listen and ask them what's different about this place than where you live. And that's always the answer. It's like there's always the sound of traffic. They've never held a butterfly or studied a bug. And I know this because of the questions that they ask me. Like, do butterflies have legs? That's the question that I get that concerns me because butterflies are part of the fourth grade science curriculum. So I don't know why they don't know that they have legs. I talked about the board games and the cards. They've never seen cards before. Most of them have never gone to a store without an adult because they're not walking there on their own. And so there's no reason really for them to do that. But I always make my grandkids order their own things from the restaurants. I make them go in and buy things by themselves because they get scared to talk to adults, and it really affects their self-confidence. A lot of them have never handled money because they've never bought anything. They never had any reason. I admit that this is an AI picture, but I had to use it because, man, it's pretty good. Today's children have a very low tolerance for discomfort. And if you have grandkids or you're with children at all today, you can, it's really obvious. If it's not a perfect 75 degrees and shady, they are unhappy. We actually had a student, more than one, at a field trip who it was like today's weather. It was about 85 degrees, so a little warm and sunny. And she actually sat on the ground and refused to move and demanded an ice cube because she was too hot and she was worried for her own health. But it was if you want to get children outside these days, it has to be the perfect conditions. This is an example that you won't believe either, because if it wasn't the person telling me, and if I didn't know her very well, I wouldn't have believed this. Karen Glenn, are you there? Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Can you
Yeah.
tell your story about the fire?
Yeah. So I teach college freshman laboratory and chemistry. And when we had students coming in, they were terrified of a Bunsen burner and they have never handled fire. I mean, not even a lighter. They had never actually been in the presence of a real fire. And I just thought that's such a primal thing. Fire is so important. I mean, for thousands of years, it's been a very important thing. We've moved away from it. I mean, even now, a lot of parents will vape and not smoke. So it was really, I had to make some labs that actually have them handle fire because I think it's real important that they understand it. We fear what we don't know, and they were just terrified. So, we got them comfortable handling it and learning what was hot and a cold fire and all that. But they just come in without that experience that you just take for granted that everybody has.
Well, Karen, to me, this is concerning because if you've never seen a fire in person, you've never been to a campfire. You've never
Yep.
been to a backyard barbecue. You've never
Mhm.
played with a lighter. You've never, I mean, those are just real experiences
Yeah.
that
And yet
children
the
should.
kids used to stoke the fire because, to heat the house and cook the food not too awful many years ago.
Well, my kid was 4. I
So,
had him out there. He was 4 years old cooking the hot dogs himself. I made him build the fire. I mean, that's just what I always did. Um, I'm just shocked by that example. And didn't you say that every year it's more and more kids that in this
yeah,
boat?
they just in the manual dexterity, like, they're on their electronics, so they have great thumbs.
Oh my
But
gosh.
the manual dexterity handling things, especially like in lab and just the manual dexterity and the critical thinking, they haven't had to do these things. And
Yep.
when you were doing chores with your parents back in the day, all that, you were exposed to tools and equipment and how to do things and trained and taught, and they're missing all of that. That's just not done anymore.
The real
And
crisis.
virtually, you don't learn by watching it virtually.
Right.
They think
Well,
they're
thank you
getting
for
it
that
from their
example.
games, but they're not.
Oh no, they definitely are not getting anything from their games. Oh, I know what they're getting from their games, Karen. I don't know. You weren't there for this. One of our field trips, we were going over carnivore, herbivore, and omnivore. And so I was writing those
Oh,
on the board and we're talking about all of those. And one of the kids said, "What about the polyvore?" And I start panicking, thinking, I don't know what a polyvore is. I've never heard of a polyvore. What the heck? And so I didn't know. And I actually stopped the lesson and thinking that I was deficient in some way. And so I looked it up on AI what a polyvore was. Polyvore is in their video game. It's one monster eating another monster or something like that in a video game, but they thought it was real. And so that's another field trip example that I didn't even put in this presentation because I didn't even think of that. But yeah, totally. I'm telling you. Another problem. This is a picture that a friend of mine put on Facebook because she was out for a walk and saw this gorgeous bobcat and took a picture and thought it was a great picture. And so she put it online. The reaction on Facebook to this picture was outrageous. People were hysterical that she was out there walking with a bobcat because they were afraid for her safety, and went on and on about how dangerous it was to walk in the woods because you might get attacked by a bobcat. And as master naturalists, hopefully we all know that bobcats are very shy. And anyway, I'll move on. Fear is a huge hurdle. And I'm seeing that more as time goes on. It's another thing that's increasing. Last spring, we had a lot of field trips. They have to tell us how many kids are coming. And so usually it's 100. And so they'll say 100 kids. Well, when they show up, it's only like 80, which is kind of a big deal because for us, that means we could have done with one less group, one less volunteer. It would have been a little easier for us. So I had to ask the teachers, what's up? You said 100, you got 80. What's the deal? And the teachers say that the parents keep them home because they are afraid that we're going on a hike and they are afraid of the snakes. Are the snakes a risk? Well, the risk is not zero, obviously. There is some risk of taking 100 kids, 25 at a time, on a hike, a half mile through the woods. But honestly, your risk of being killed in a car wreck are way higher, like way. So I don't know why people aren't afraid to get in their car and drive off, because that's probably one of the most dangerous things we do, and nobody gives it a second thought. Actually, this year, this spring, in fact, we had an entire field trip cancel because there were too many parents who were afraid to send their kid. So that's it. Like I said, everything that I'm talking about is getting worse and worse as time goes on. If I talk to people about this problem, about kids not playing outside, the number one reaction is, oh, my kid goes outside a lot. He's in this team sport. He plays soccer. Soccer's not solving this problem. It's not the same thing as free play outside to explore nature, look under the rock, ask what this plant is, or it's not doing any of those things. If they're on a soccer field, that soccer field is mowed and treated. There's nothing living in that soccer field. Not very much. It's not the same. School recess is not nature. If you've ever seen a school recess, you would understand what I'm saying. Being outdoors with headphones is not solving the problem either. You've got to be able to hear nature and hear the natural sounds, and being able to explore. I don't know how they walk with headphones. I would be terrified. I need to hear who's coming up behind me, but I don't know. That's them. Walking on concrete in a perfectly manicured park is not solving the problem for the same reason. You're just really not experiencing nature in that situation. Children need unstructured free play outside in order to truly explore nature. We've already talked about this. I'm sure you've heard this before, that studies show that listening to bird song, especially while outdoors, lowers blood pressure and reduces stress. And that's from a study I found at Purdue, but that's pretty widespreadly, that's pretty known, I think. Solutions. Honestly, I think I was a little bit ambitious in the title of this program that we're going to reverse the trend. I don't see it reversing, but I am going to share some things that I've tried with children that actually did work somewhat. This is my favorite. This is Luna, my granddaughter. She's 4, and my son found this preschool. It's genius. These people bought a building and brought in a truckload of dirt and dumped it. And then they invited the children, and they just threw a whole bunch of toys out there. And that's what this preschool is. They do it every day of the year. Doesn't matter about the weather. And they just let the kids play in the dirt. And I'm like, Richard, you've got a backyard. You could just open your back door and not pay, $100 a week for this thing. But that's just not the way they do things now. And I just think that that's a genius idea. And it's the same thing as opening your back door and letting your kid. But anyway, we'll move on. State park campsite. This is something that I do a lot with my grandkids that live in the city. I will rent a campsite for the day, and we have a campfire. And I always try to get one that backs up to the lake, because then we'll go fishing. I had that picture on the front slide. That was my other grandson. And we go fishing, but I don't buy the worms. They have to find their own. And campsites at state parks, if you don't go in a place that's mowed, you can let them dig a little bit and find their own worms, and they have a lot of fun with that. So that's probably my favorite way to get kids outside, because you can spend the whole day you don't have to go camping, because I ain't sleeping on the ground. That's not happening. But you can get it for the day too. A camera, that's been really one of the best things. Just this is Trey. He's 12. I gave him this camera. We go looking around. Hagerman is big enough that you can drive a kid around with a camera and they can take all kinds of pictures. And they get really excited about that, especially if they're a little bit younger and they don't have a phone yet. They can use to learn a digital camera. I've had huge success with that. Kids love competition and contests. This is the picture that Trey was taking in the last photo, and we entered it in the Hagerman photo contest because they have a place for children. They have a side of it for kids. And that's been really good too, because then we spend a lot of time taking all the pictures, going through all the pictures to find the best one. It increases their self-confidence a bit. So anytime you can think of a contest or competition, that's a good way to get kids outside. Orienteering works really well, especially with little ones. And I found this out by accident. I was out with Trey and we got lost, of course, because yeah, I'm not very good with directions. And so I gave him the compass and I made him, we went off the trail and he had to find the way home just by looking. We looked at the map and saw where the lake was. I knew we were lost because the lake was on our left and the lake should have been on our right. And I knew that much. So I get credit for that. But he had to he had to go through the forest and lead us home just by pointing north. So that was really, really a good way to get kids outside. A scavenger hunt, loves the scavenger. We have scavenger hunts at Hagerman as well. You can make up your own, but really making up your own scavenger hunt is not going to get you there. What I always do is make the kids decide what they're going to look for before we leave the house. And a good way to do that is all the state parks and Hagerman as well. They have wildlife guides on the website. So you can look at those and they will show you what's out there that you can look for to find. And so having them come up with the things to look for is even more enriching. Kids always need to have a goal. So we're going to look for, today we're going to look for a roadrunner. So that's a great goal. It doesn't matter if they find the roadrunner or not. They're going to find something. So yeah, that's always good. A really good resource and one of my favorites, especially for a little bit older kids, is the weekly bird census at the Friends of Hagerman. Every week we have Jack Childs. He's actually also a Blackland Prairie Master Naturalist, and he takes a whole team of people out every Tuesday, and they survey the entire refuge and count every bird that they see, and they publish it for everyone to see. It's on our website. And so I hand that list to Trey, and we look at the numbers of birds, and if there's 200 red-winged blackbirds, then we're probably going to find one. So we'll put that on our list of things to look for. So we choose things off that list. We have to look them up on the internet so we know what they look like, and we listen to what they sound like on Merlin. And so we get really prepared, and then we head off to Hagerman to try and find these birds. Are we very successful? No. But we have a great time, and we don't usually find what Jack found, but sometimes we do, and it's always fun. It's by the way, these AI pictures are really awesome. I have to admit, using a lot of those. Okay, Merlin and Seek for the older kids, especially ones that don't yet have a phone. If they want your phone, if they don't have one, they want yours. So you can give them your phone with Merlin and Seek on there. Merlin is the bird app that will identify the birds from their sound, and Seek is one that you can check all the plants, all kinds of wildlife will identify for you. It's a lot easier to use than iNaturalist for a child. And if they do have a phone, this is something that they could have on their phone to play with that is going to be a lot less nasty than what they're probably normally looking at. Don't be afraid to take the kids out regardless of the weather. There's no such thing as bad weather, only inappropriate clothing. I really believe in that. Again, these kids are so climate controlled and they can't handle being uncomfortable at all. So if you're going to go out, you really need to be well prepared. And you also need to be willing to abandon the mission and go home if they start whining, because you're never going to get anywhere with a whining kid. You have to have a bag of snacks. You have to go slow and to do short amounts of time until they get a little better at it and get a little more adjusted to being outside. It always has to be fun and it always has to be optional. You can't force kids to enjoy nature. You can't force these kids to do anything, trust me. But if the children, I really believe that all of this is a real crisis in our country because the children are getting more and more disconnected from nature. And as that goes on over time, they're going to they are not going to feel compelled to protect it at all. And I think that's one of the worst things. When I was researching for this talk, I kept coming across the same book over and over again. It is The Last Child of the Woods. And somebody did a presentation for Blackland about that book, and I think a month or two ago. It's by Richard Louv, Louv. Um, and it's sad because I kept coming over that same book over and over again. Everybody is referencing this one book. Why is there only one book? There needs to be more. More things need to be this problem needs to be given more attention. Nobody's really talking about it, and it's getting worse and worse. Of course, as master naturalists, there's only so much that we can do. It's really a drop in the bucket, but it is a very important drop. I mean, if you can take some adults out on a dirt trail and it's their first time on a dirt trail, that's meaningful. I mean, that's really something. If you can have them stop and listen to nature and not have those car noises that they have at their house, I mean, that's kind of a big deal. At Hagerman, Karen Glenn was the one who talked about the fire. She and I are working on the field trips. She is actually the chairperson for Hagerman Field Trips, and I work with her on that. We we have a really awesome time with these kids. The kids at the field trips, they're not like kids at school. Another problem that I was gonna get into is that a new trend has come up in the past 20 years or so, which I'm very unhappy about. And it's parents going on vacation without the kids. It's more prevalent now because of, I think, Facebook, because it's almost like a competition of who can have the best vacation. So the parents ditch the kids with their friends. They go to Cancun, take a whole bunch of pictures, and the kids never get to go on vacation. My parents, they bought a camper. We were all over the country, going to museums. The kids today, I mean, they're not. I know adults who have never left the county they were born in. It's a true fact. So the kids at a Hagerman field trip, some of them, and of course we have all socioeconomic groups at Hagerman. They are public school kids. They are from everywhere. They are all kinds of kids. And for a lot of them, a Hagerman field trip is the best day of their year. It's up there with Christmas. They love it. They are the happiest kids you will ever meet. We have the best lesson plans. We've been donating materials from all over the place. We have we have great stuff. It's very easy. It's 9:30 to 1:30, and this talk is going to become a shameless promotion for volunteers at Hagerman Field Trips. Woo woo! We need you. We need more people. We need master naturalists. We can't have just anybody working with the kids. We need to have people that like children, and we need and master naturalists are have that background check, so they're very valuable to us. Yes, it's an hour from you, I know, but it's a really good day. It's your whole day probably. After by the time you get home, you'll be exhausted, but we would love to work with you, and we have a great time. Every field trip has 4 sessions. We do the butterfly garden with butterfly binoculars. So the kids are given insect binoculars and told to find whatever they can. Skins and skulls we have donated to us from Simmons Bank. We have an art project that they do indoors, and then we have the hike. So 3 of the activities are outside. The skins and skulls are in the pavilion. If I've talked you into helping us, you can and Karen, I was going to have you chime in here. You there?
Yeah.
So Karen Glenn, like I said, is the chairperson of the field trips. And Karen, did you want to say anything to entice people to come work with us?
Yeah, if we probably need to get like our email address. Well, you've got the info.
It's
We
up
both
there at the
get
top,
those.
it's right here.
But yeah, we're working on hiking, and I'm really interested in expanding our trail system and doing a lot of work on the trails, so that could be coming up as well. And also groups. The parents of these kids also need some nature. And so I've taken a few adult groups out, and I would like to expand it not only in the school groups, but also have some adult uh, field trips where we can take them out
Absolutely.
and teach them about
And we
nature.
need volunteers for all of that.
Yeah.
Trail
And it'll
guides.
mostly be hiking. It won't be like, you know, the programs like for the kids, but I think it would be great to have some field trips and hikes. We have some great birding experts up here, and I would like to expand that a little bit.
Absolutely. So if you are at all interested in working with us, we're really fun to work with too, right, Karen? We have a blast. So we would love for you to join us.
We have too much fun.
We have a lot of fun. So, yeah, our email's there, and you can please reach out if you're would like to join us. And at this point, if anybody has any more ideas about how to get kids outside, I'm all ears. I was hoping we could have a little discussion if any of you are have any suggestions or questions or ideas or anything.
If you would like to participate, just unmute yourself and join the conversation.
Was there anything in the chat? Any questions or anything?
Patricia, really that so many people love going to Hagerman. They love their children to go to Hagerman. They enjoy your programming and
Awesome.
find the
We
top.
have a lot. If you haven't already signed up for the Featherless Flyer, Hagerman has so many activities for families and children. Just every month, we have at least 10 different things going on that you could bring kids to. Nobody has a comment? I don't guess. Well, we ended a little early.
Well, thank you, Patricia. If anyone does have any questions that you think of later, you can just email her at info@friendsofhagerman.org. And thank you, everyone, for participating. And we'll see you on our next deep dive. Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.